I was standing at the kitchen sink, scrubbing the last dinner plate, when my phone buzzed against the counter. The message was from my wife. 7,000 miles away in Bali on what she'd called a spontaneous wellness retreat with her friend Claire. I dried my hands and picked up the phone. Just ran into my ex here. What a coincidence. Be a good little husband and relax. I read it once, then twice, then a third time, letting each word sink in. Good little husband. The phrase hit me like a slap. Not because it was shocking. She'd been using variations of it for months now, always with that same condescending edge, like I was a pet that needed training. But this time, something about seeing it in text, seeing her actually type those words while she was halfway around the world, made something inside me go quiet. The coincidence part was what really stopped me cold. See, Bali isn't exactly the neighborhood coffee shop where you accidentally bump into people from your past. It's literally on the other side of the planet. And her ex, Tanner, wasn't some worldly adventurer. Last I'd heard, the guy barely left our state, let alone flew internationally. Yet somehow, they'd both ended up at the same tropical resort at the exact same time. I set the phone down and finished the dishes. But my mind was already moving in a different direction. 2 days earlier, she'd video called me from her hotel room, gushing about how spontaneous and freeing the whole trip was. How she and Claire had just decided one night that they needed to find themselves. So they booked flights and left. She'd made it sound so impulsive, so liberating, like some kind of spiritual awakening she was having without me. Spontaneous. I stared at the dish soap bubbles swirling down the drain. That's when I remembered something. Last month, I'd borrowed her laptop to check my email while mine was updating. I'd accidentally clicked on her messages and seen a conversation with someone named T. I hadn't thought much of it at the time, just caught a glimpse of something about making plans before she quickly closed it and told me it was work stuff. Tanner. I dried my hands slowly, then walked to our home office. Her laptop was still there on the desk, right where she'd left it. She was always logged into everything, passwords saved, messages synced. She trusted me completely, she'd said so many times. Or maybe she just never thought I'd look. I opened the laptop and pulled up her messages. My hands were steady. I scrolled back 3 weeks, and there it was. A conversation with Tanner McLean that made my stomach drop to the floor. Can't wait to see you in Bali. It's been too long. I know. I've been planning this for months. Finally found the perfect excuse with the girls' trip. Your husband still doesn't know? He doesn't suspect anything. He trusts me completely. Sometimes I think he's too trusting for his own good. I sat back in the chair and just stared at the screen. They'd been planning this for months. The spontaneous wellness retreat, the one she'd sold me with tears in her eyes about needing space for personal growth, had been carefully orchestrated down to the resort choice. She'd even researched which one Tanner would be staying at and booked the same place. The messages went back further than I wanted to see. Logistics, excitement, her talking about me like I was an obstacle she'd successfully maneuvered around. My phone buzzed again. Another message from her. Hope you're not worrying about me. You know how you get. I'm just catching up with an old friend. Nothing for you to stress about. I read it 3 times. She was doubling down, actually painting me as the anxious, controlling husband while she was living it up in paradise with her ex. She wanted me to feel guilty for even questioning her. But here's the thing. I didn't feel guilty. I didn't feel angry either. I felt calm. For the first time in months, maybe years, everything suddenly made sense. All the little dismissive comments, the growing emotional distance, the way she'd been treating our marriage like an inconvenience she had to manage. It all clicked into place. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was calculated, deliberate. And she'd been arrogant enough to document the whole thing. I stood up, walked to the kitchen, and grabbed a beer from the fridge. Then I sat down at the table and just thought. She wanted me to be a good little husband and relax. Perfect. I was about to relax so completely that it would change everything. I opened my phone and started typing a response, then deleted it. Typed another one, deleted that too. No, this needed strategy, not emotion. She'd spent months planning her betrayal. I could spend a few days planning my response. The game had started. She just didn't know I was playing yet. The next morning, I called in sick to work. I wasn't actually sick, but I needed time to think clearly and go through everything methodically. My wife had been careless with her digital trail, and I was going to follow every single breadcrumb she'd left behind. I spent the morning systematically going through her laptop. Browser history showed she'd been researching Bali resorts for 3 months. She'd looked up Tanner's social media profiles dozens of times, scrolling through his photos, checking his location tags, studying his posts like she was preparing for a reunion. She'd even Googled how to reconnect with an ex without your spouse knowing. The audacity of it was almost impressive. The planning was extensive. She'd coordinated with Claire to provide the perfect cover story. Claire was probably in on it, or at least suspicious enough to go along with it. She'd timed the trip around her cycle so she'd look her best. She'd bought new clothes, expensive ones, and charged them to our joint credit card under generic store names so I wouldn't notice. $100 here, $200 there. Small enough to fly under the radar, but together it added up to over $1,000 spent preparing for her affair. But the most damning evidence was in her photo backup folder. Pictures from the last week showed her at the resort restaurant, on the beach, by the pool. And in several shots, carefully positioned in the background or just barely visible at the edge of the frame, was Tanner. They weren't even trying to hide it from other people, just from me. In one photo, I could see them sitting together at a beachside bar, her hand resting on his arm, both of them laughing like they didn't have spouses waiting for them back home. I sat back and just stared at the screen. Around noon, my phone buzzed with another message from her. Having such an amazing time. You should try to relax more often instead of always working. Maybe when I get back, we can plan something fun together. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. She was literally in the middle of betraying our marriage while suggesting I needed to work less and enjoy life more. But her tone gave me an idea, one that shifted my entire perspective on this situation. She wanted me to be passive and trusting. She expected me to respond with worry or jealousy, to call her crying and demanding explanations, to play the role of the confused, anxious husband while she enjoyed her adventure. That's what she'd been conditioning me for months, getting me used to accepting her dismissive behavior, training me to doubt my own instincts. But what if I didn't give her that? What if I gave her exactly what she'd asked for? What if I just relaxed? That afternoon, I was outside grabbing the mail when Joyce from next door came walking up her driveway. We'd been friendly neighbors for 3 years. The kind of people who wave hello and chat about weather and lawn care, nothing more. But I knew she'd been going through her own issues. Her husband, Carl, had been treating her poorly for months, coming home late without explanation, being emotionally distant and dismissive. The same patterns I'd been experiencing, just from the other side. "You look different today," she said, studying my face with a slight tilt of her head. More, I don't know, peaceful? "Just learned something important about letting go," I told her, and I meant it. Sometimes when people show you who they truly are, the best response is to believe them. Joyce nodded slowly, understanding crossing her features. Carl's been doing the same thing, making me feel crazy for questioning obvious lies. I'm tired of playing detective in my own marriage. We talked for maybe 10 minutes, standing there between our driveways. About marriage, about trust, about what happens when you realize you've been bending yourself into uncomfortable shapes to accommodate someone else's selfishness. It was the most honest conversation I'd had in months. No games, no manipulation, no reading between the lines to figure out what someone really meant. Joyce was intelligent and straightforward, refreshingly genuine compared to the emotional chess match my wife had been playing. "You know what?" I said suddenly, the idea forming as I spoke. "I was going to order pizza tonight and watch something mindless on Netflix. You're welcome to join if you want. Sounds like we could both use some uncomplicated company." She hesitated for just a moment, then smiled. A real smile, not the careful, measured ones people give when they're hiding something. "That actually sounds perfect. Carl's working late again, supposedly. 7 o'clock? I'll bring wine." After Joyce went inside, something clicked into place in my mind. My wife wanted me to relax and not worry about her activities in Bali. Fine. I was going to relax so thoroughly that I'd have my own activities to not worry about. I spent the afternoon researching divorce lawyers. If she could plan secretly for months, so could I. But my planning would be for something much more permanent than a vacation fling. Around 5 in the evening, my wife texted again. "Tanner's been telling me about all his adventures since college. Makes me realize how much I've been missing by staying in one place. Maybe I need more excitement in my life." I read it twice and actually laughed out loud. She was laying groundwork for future betrayals, testing the waters to see how much I'd tolerate. She was also fishing for a reaction, hoping I'd get jealous and possessive so she could paint me as controlling and unreasonable, justifying whatever she wanted to do next. Instead, I typed back, "That sounds wonderful, honey. I'm having my own kind of adventure here. About to have dinner with Joyce. She's been such great company while you're finding yourself." I didn't mention it was just pizza and Netflix. I let her imagination fill in the blanks, just like she'd been doing to me. The phone rang within 30 seconds. I let it ring, then ring again. On the 4th call, I answered casually, like I'd just noticed the phone. "Hey, honey, what's up?" "What do you mean you're having dinner with Joyce?" Her voice was sharp, completely different from the relaxed, breezy tone in her texts. "Just being neighborly," I said calmly. "She's going through a tough time with Carl, and I thought some friendly company might help. You know, like how you're catching up with Tanner." The silence stretched for almost 10 seconds. I could practically hear her brain working, trying to find the angle that made her situation different from mine. That's completely different. Tanner and I have history. We're just talking about old times." "Joyce and I have history too," I said reasonably. "We've been neighbors for 3 years. Seems like the same thing to me." "You know what I mean. Don't be difficult." There it was. The double standard laid completely bare. She could reconnect with an ex-boyfriend in a tropical paradise, but I couldn't have pizza with a neighbor. "I'm not being difficult," I said, keeping my voice light and unconcerned. "I'm doing exactly what you asked. I'm relaxing. I'm not worrying about what you're doing, and I'm enjoying some company while you're away. Isn't that what you wanted?" Another long pause. "Fine, just don't do anything stupid." "Like what? Order too much pizza? Pick a bad movie?" "You know what I mean." Actually, I don't. But I should go. Joyce will be here soon and I want to tidy up. I hung up before she could respond. My hands were steady. My heartbeat was normal. For the first time in this entire situation, I felt like I was in control of something. Joyce arrived right at 7 with a bottle of wine and a genuine smile. The kind that comes from someone who isn't performing or calculating their next move. We ordered pizza, opened the wine, and settled in to watch a comedy neither of us had to think too hard about. It was refreshing, simple, real. No hidden meanings in casual comments. No subtle tests to see if I was paying enough attention. No walking on eggshells, wondering if I'd said something that would trigger a 3-day Cold War. Just two people who'd both been treated poorly by their spouses, enjoying straightforward human company. "You seem lighter tonight," Joyce said during a quiet moment between scenes. "Whatever's going on with your wife's trip, you're handling it well." Let's just say I've decided to take her advice and relax more. That's probably wise. I spent months trying to catch Carl in his lies, and all it did was make me miserable and exhausted. Now I just accept that he's going to do what he's going to do. "And what are you going to do?" She looked at me thoughtfully. "Whatever makes me happy for a change." We clinked glasses to that. Around 9, my phone started buzzing repeatedly on the coffee table. I ignored it until Joyce noticed and nodded toward it. "You should check those. Might be important." I glanced at the screen. 5 messages from my wife, each one more frantic than the last. "Are you still with her? Why aren't you answering? This isn't what I meant when I said relax. Call me back now. I'm coming home early if this continues." I showed Joyce the last message, and she actually laughed. A surprised, genuine burst of laughter. "Let me get this straight. She's in Bali with her ex-boyfriend, but she's threatening to come home early because you had pizza with your neighbor. That's about the size of it. What are you going to tell her?" I thought for a moment, then typed carefully. "Having such a wonderful evening. Joyce is amazing company. Thanks for encouraging me to relax and enjoy myself. Hope you're having as much fun as I am." Then I took a quick photo, just our wine glasses and the TV in the background, making sure Joyce's hand was visible but keeping everything completely innocent. Nothing inappropriate, just enough to show I was genuinely relaxed and enjoying myself. I sent both the message and the photo. My phone rang immediately. "Let me guess," Joyce said with a knowing smile. "She doesn't like the relaxed version of you." Apparently not. I declined the call and turned my phone to silent. Now, where were we with this movie? But Joyce was looking at me with something that might have been admiration. "You know what? I think I'm learning something from watching you handle this. Carl's been making me feel crazy for months. But you're showing me there's another way to respond to this kind of behavior." "What's that?" "Stop playing their game entirely. Just live your life and let them deal with their own choices." We finished the movie in comfortable conversation, the kind where silences aren't awkward and laughter comes easily. Joyce helped me clean up around 11, and as she was leaving, she paused at the door. "Thank you for tonight. I haven't felt this normal in months." "Same here." After she left, I checked my phone. 14 missed calls, 23 text messages. The evolution was fascinating from a psychological standpoint. She'd gone from confident to concerned to angry to desperate in the span of just 2 hours. The last message, sent 5 minutes ago, was the most telling. "Please call me. I need to explain about Tanner. It's not what you think." I smiled, set the phone aside, and went to bed. Tomorrow was going to be interesting. I woke up to 37 missed calls and my phone battery nearly dead from buzzing all night. The messages ranged from desperate pleas to angry accusations to threats about coming home immediately. I plugged in the phone, made coffee, and read through them systematically while the morning light filtered through the kitchen windows. The progression was psychologically fascinating. She'd gone from trying to minimize her situation with Tanner to demanding detailed explanations about my evening with Joyce. The woman who told me to relax was now sending messages every 10 minutes asking what I was doing, where I was, who I was with. At 6 in the morning Bali time, she'd even tried video calling. I could only imagine how that conversation would have gone. Me asking why she was so upset about pizza and Netflix when she was in paradise with her ex-boyfriend. Instead of responding to any of it, I did something that would have been unthinkable a week ago. I went about my normal morning routine. Shower, coffee, newspaper. I even made myself a decent breakfast instead of grabbing something on the way to work. Scrambled eggs, toast, fresh fruit. I sat at the table and actually tasted my food for the first time in months. Around 8, my phone rang. Unknown international number. I answered, my voice calm. Hello? I've been trying to reach you all night. Her voice was strained, stretched thin. What the hell was last night about? Good morning to you too, honey. How's your vacation going? Don't play dumb with me. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Actually, I don't. I'm having coffee and reading the news. Did something happen? That little show you put on with Joyce? What was that supposed to prove? Show? I took a sip of coffee. We had pizza and watched a movie. You told me to relax, so I relaxed. I thought you'd be happy about that. You know that's not what I meant. Actually, I don't know what you meant. You're in Bali with Tanner having the time of your life, telling me not to worry and to trust you. So I'm extending you the same courtesy. I'm not worrying about what you're doing, and I'm trusting you to make good choices. The silence stretched so long I thought the call had dropped. It's not the same thing at all. Help me understand how it's different. Tanner and we're just friends now. We have closure. It's healthy to process old relationships. And Joyce and I are neighbors being supportive during difficult times in our marriages. That also sounds healthy to me. But you sent me that photo on purpose. You were trying to make me jealous. The audacity was almost admirable. She was actually accusing me of playing games while she was literally on a secret romantic getaway she'd been planning for months. I sent you a photo of wine glasses and a TV, I said evenly. If that made you jealous, maybe you should examine why. When you send me photos from Bali, I don't get jealous. I trust you. Another long pause. I could hear her breathing, trying to find the right words to regain control of this conversation. I want to come home early. Why? You said you needed this time for personal growth and self-discovery. You should take all the time you need. I miss you. That's sweet. But you also said you needed excitement and adventure in your life. Bali with Tanner sounds pretty exciting. Don't cut it short on my account. You're being cruel. I'm being supportive. I want you to have exactly what you asked for. Complete freedom to explore what makes you happy without me being anxious or controlling about it. The call ended abruptly. Either she hung up or the connection failed. Either way, I felt oddly peaceful. I went to work and had one of my most productive days in months. Without the constant low-level anxiety about my wife's behavior. Without the mental energy spent trying to decode her mixed messages and figure out what I'd done wrong this time, I could actually focus on my job. Problems that had seemed overwhelming last week suddenly felt manageable. During my lunch break, I called Douglas Crosby, the divorce attorney I'd researched yesterday. His assistant put me through right away. "Mr. Crosby, I need to schedule a consultation about filing for divorce." "Of course. Can you come in tomorrow morning? Say 9 o'clock? "That works perfectly." Around 3 in the afternoon, Joyce texted me. "Carl wants to talk tonight. Any advice from someone handling marital drama better than me?" I thought about it for a moment, then replied, "Just remember, you can't control what he does, only how you respond. Stay calm, and don't let him make you feel crazy for having reasonable expectations." "Thanks. That actually helps a lot. Dinner soon to celebrate whatever we decide?" "Absolutely." At 4:30, my wife called again. I let it ring twice before answering. "I've been thinking about our conversation this morning," she said carefully, her tone completely different now, measured, almost contrite. "And I realize I might have sent the wrong message with my texts about Tanner. I don't want you to think anything inappropriate is happening." "I don't think anything inappropriate is happening," I said honestly. "I trust you completely." Good. So we're okay?" "We're perfect. You're having your adventure, I'm having mine. Everyone's happy." "What do you mean, your adventure?" "Just exploring new perspectives, meeting new people, learning about myself. Same as you." "What new people?" "Joyce and I have become closer friends. She's incredibly insightful about relationships and personal growth. Really helps me understand what I want from life." "I don't like where this is going." "Where is what going?" "I'm just following your example. You're exploring connections that make you feel alive and excited. I'm doing the same thing." "It's not the same thing at all." "You keep saying that, but you haven't explained how it's different." "Because Tanner and I have history. We're working through old feelings in a mature, emotionally intelligent way. You barely know Joyce." "That's true," I acknowledged. "Joyce and I are building something completely new. No baggage, no old drama, no complicated history. Just two people discovering they have a lot in common and genuinely enjoy each other's company. It's actually really refreshing." The silence on the other end was absolute. "I'm booking a flight home tonight." "That seems impulsive. You've only been gone a week of your 2-week trip. Are you sure you want to cut your personal growth journey short?" "I need to come home." "If that's what you want. But I should mention I have plans tomorrow evening. Joyce and I are having dinner to discuss some things Carl said to her. She really values my perspective on marriage and relationships." "Cancel it." "I don't think that's fair to Joyce. She's going through a difficult time and could use the support, just like you needed support from Tanner." "That's completely different." "You know," I said thoughtfully, "you keep saying that, but from where I'm sitting, it looks exactly the same. Two married people supporting each other through marital difficulties. Both situations involving close personal connection with someone of the opposite sex. Both happening while their spouses are elsewhere, dealing with their own issues. You're twisting this around. You're manipulating the situation to make me look bad." "I'm not twisting anything. I'm applying your logic consistently. If it's healthy for you to reconnect with Tanner in Bali and work through complicated feelings, then it's healthy for me to connect with Joyce here and explore what I need from relationships. If you deserve understanding and trust from me, then I deserve the same from you." The call ended abruptly. This time I was certain she hung up. An hour later, she texted, "Flight lands tomorrow at 6 p.m. We need to talk." I replied, "Looking forward to it. I have so much to share about what I've learned while you've been finding yourself." Then I called Douglas Crosby's office and confirmed our 9 o'clock appointment for tomorrow morning. The next morning, I sat in Douglas Crosby's office, reviewing documents I never thought I'd need to organize. Bank statements showing every transaction from the past year. Property deeds for the house we'd bought together. Insurance policies, investment accounts, credit card statements highlighting the charges she'd made preparing for her affair. The attorney was thorough and professional, explaining my options with the kind of clarity I'd been missing in my marriage for months. Based on what you've shown me, this should be relatively straightforward, Douglas said, adjusting his glasses as he reviewed the printed messages from her laptop. No children, clear documentation of assets, and if she was indeed planning this affair for months, as these messages suggest, we have grounds that work strongly in your favor. How long does the process typically take? In cases like this, where one party has been deceptive about finances and fidelity, usually 3 to 6 months if they cooperate. Longer if they fight it. But given the evidence you have, most attorneys would advise their client to settle reasonably. I signed the retainer agreement and left his office with a strange sense of relief. For the first time in months, I had a clear plan forward. Not hope that things might improve, not anxiety about what might happen next. Just a simple, straightforward path out of a situation that had become toxic. At work, I wrapped up projects and organized my files. If the next few weeks were going to be complicated, I wanted my professional life as smooth as possible. My productivity had been remarkable since I'd stopped trying to decode my wife's behavior and started taking concrete action instead. Problems got solved, deadlines got met. My boss even commented on how focused I seemed lately. Around lunch, Joyce texted me. Carl admitted to the affair. 3 months with a coworker. Says he wants to work on things now that it's out in the open. How generous of him. I called her immediately. How are you holding up? Better than I expected, actually. Her voice sounded steadier than I'd heard it in months. Watching how you've handled your situation this week gave me perspective. I'm not devastated. I'm just done. What's your next move? Meeting with a lawyer this afternoon. Carl can work on himself all he wants. I'm working on my exit strategy. Good for you. You deserve so much better than someone who lies to your face for months and then expects gratitude for finally being honest. Funny thing is, I think I always knew. I just kept making excuses because facing the truth seemed too overwhelming. But you showed me it doesn't have to be overwhelming. It can actually be empowering. After we hung up, I sat in my car for a moment, thinking about how much perspective shifts when you stop trying to control other people's choices and start controlling your own responses. A week ago, discovering my wife's betrayal would have destroyed me, would have sent me spiraling into self-doubt and desperate attempts to figure out what I'd done wrong, how I could fix it, what I needed to change about myself to make her want to stay. Now it felt like being handed the key to a cage I hadn't even realized I was in. At 3 in the afternoon, my phone buzzed. Landed early, on my way home. We really need to talk. I replied, see you soon. I have some things to share too. I left work an hour early and stopped by the house to prepare. I gathered all the printed evidence Douglas had suggested I compile. Screenshots of her messages with Tanner showing months of planning, browser history showing her research, credit card statements for the new clothes and resort bookings, photos from her backup folder showing Tanner clearly visible in multiple shots. I arranged everything neatly in a folder and placed it on the kitchen table next to the divorce papers Douglas had prepared as what he called a conversation starter. Then I sat down and waited. She walked in at exactly 5:47, tanned and looking guilty. Her eyes went immediately to the folder and papers on the table. What's all this? Have a seat. You said we needed to talk. She remained standing, arms crossed defensively across her chest. I want to explain about Tanner first. I'm listening. It wasn't what you think. Yes, we planned to see each other, but it was for closure. We needed to discuss our past relationship so we could both move forward cleanly. In Bali, at the same resort, for a week. The location doesn't matter. What matters is that nothing inappropriate happened. We're both married people who needed to resolve old feelings. I opened the folder and spread out the printed messages across the table. These messages suggest otherwise. Can't wait to see you. It's been too long. I've been planning this for months. Your husband trusts me completely. Sometimes I think he's too trusting for his own good. Her face went pale as she recognized her own words printed in black and white. You went through my private messages. After you told me to be a good little husband and relax about coincidentally running into your ex-boyfriend in paradise. Yes, I did some investigating. Turns out my instincts were completely correct. Those messages are taken out of context. Really? What's the context for finally found the perfect excuse with the girl's trip? What's the context for researching his social media dozens of times? What's the context for Googling how to reconnect with an ex without your spouse knowing? She sat down heavily, finally understanding that I had the complete picture. It wasn't supposed to happen like this. How was it supposed to happen? You were going to confess when you got home, or just keep lying indefinitely while you figured out if Tanner was worth leaving me for? I don't know. I was confused. Tanner and I have this history, and when he reached out saying he'd be in Bali, I thought maybe if we spent time together, I could figure out if what we had was worth throwing away my marriage for. The honesty was almost refreshing after months of gaslighting. And what did you figure out? That I made a terrible mistake, that I love you and want to make this work. Interesting timing. You figured that out right around the time you saw a photo of me having dinner with Joyce. That photo scared me. The thought of losing you to someone else made me realize what I was throwing away. So you were fine betraying our marriage as long as you thought I'd be waiting here like a good little husband. But the moment you thought I might have other options, suddenly you wanted to work things out. It's not like that. It's exactly like that. You wanted to keep me as a backup plan while you explored whether you could do better. She started crying then, but they felt performative. Strategic tears designed to manipulate rather than genuine emotion. Please don't do this. I made a mistake, but I love you. We can get through this. I'll cut off all contact with Tanner. We can do counseling. I'll do whatever it takes. I picked up the divorce papers and slid them across the table toward her. I've already decided what it's going to take. Her eyes widened as she saw the legal documents. You can't be serious. One mistake and you're ready to throw away 7 years of marriage? One mistake? This wasn't a mistake. This was a calculated decision you made every single day for months. Every time you looked me in the eye and lied about your plans. Every time you made me feel crazy for having reasonable concerns. Every time you called me a good little husband like I was your pet instead of your partner. I'll fight this. You can't just end our marriage because you're angry. I'm not angry, I said. And it was true. I'm done. There's a difference. What about Joyce? Is this about her? Did something happen between you two? Joyce is a friend who's been honest with me about her situation. She's not the reason for this decision. You are. I don't believe that. I think you've been planning this, just like you're accusing me of planning things with Tanner. You're absolutely right. I have been planning since Tuesday morning when I found your messages. I've been planning my exit from this marriage. The difference is I'm being honest about it now, instead of gaslighting you for months." She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. "Please don't do this. I made a mistake, but I love you. We can get through this if you just give me a chance." The mistake wasn't going to Bali with Tanner. The mistake was thinking you could manipulate me into accepting it. You told me to be a good little husband and relax. So I relaxed. I relaxed so completely that I realized how much better life could be without someone who treats me like an inconvenience to their happiness. I stood up and handed her the papers directly. "You have 30 days to respond. My attorney's information is on the cover letter." "Where are you going?" "Out to dinner. Joyce and I are celebrating our freedom from people who don't appreciate what they have." "You're leaving now? After everything, you're just walking out?" "You spent a week in paradise with another man. I'm having dinner with a friend. Seems reasonable." As I reached the door, she called out desperately, "This isn't over. I won't make this easy for you." I turned back with a calm smile. "Actually, you already made it easy. All those messages you sent Tanner, all that planning you documented, it's going to be very helpful in court. Thanks for keeping such thorough records." I walked out to find Joyce waiting in her car as we'd planned. She'd left Carl that afternoon and was staying at her sister's place until she found her own apartment. "How did it go?" she asked as I got in. "Exactly as expected. She's shocked that actions have consequences." Carl was the same way. Genuinely surprised that I wasn't grateful for his honesty about the affair. Like I should thank him for finally admitting what I already knew. "Where should we celebrate?" "Somewhere with good wine and no drama." As we drove away, I felt lighter than I had in years. My wife had taught me an important lesson about marriage, just not the one she'd intended. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is refuse to enable someone else's selfishness, and sometimes relaxing means letting go of everything that's been weighing you down. 6 weeks later, I was sitting in Douglas Crosby's office signing the final divorce papers. My ex-wife had initially threatened to fight everything, hired an expensive attorney, sent me angry texts about how I was destroying our family, told mutual friends I'd abandoned her in her moment of vulnerability. But once her own attorney reviewed the evidence and explained how badly it would go for her in court, she'd agreed to a settlement that was fair to both of us. She got to keep some of the investments her parents had given us. I got the house. We split everything else down the middle. The process had been surprisingly smooth once she'd accepted reality. She'd kept Tanner's contact information, apparently, because 2 weeks after our confrontation, she'd announced she was taking time to explore her feelings and moved in with him temporarily. That decision had made the divorce proceedings significantly simpler, since it removed any pretense that she wanted to reconcile. "That's it," Douglas said, sliding the signed documents into a folder. "You're officially divorced as of today. The house paperwork will be finalized by next week, and the financial accounts have already been divided according to the agreement." I shook his hand, feeling completion rather than loss. "Thank you for everything." "My pleasure. I have to say, this was one of the most straightforward cases I've handled in years. Having all that documentation from the beginning made everything much easier." I walked out of the office into a crisp autumn afternoon. The last 6 weeks had been a whirlwind of paperwork and phone calls and logistics, but also surprisingly peaceful. Without the constant stress of trying to decode mixed messages and manipulation. Without the anxiety of wondering what I'd done wrong or how I could fix things. I'd been sleeping better, working more effectively, and genuinely enjoying life again. Joyce had gone through her own divorce process, which had been messier than mine. Carl had tried to blame her for driving him to cheat, fought her on the financial settlement, told everyone who'd listened that she'd abandoned their marriage over one mistake. But last week, her lawyer had finally worn him down, and she was now officially free as well. We'd been spending time together throughout the whole process, but carefully. Both of us were cautious about jumping into anything serious too quickly after ending long marriages. Mostly, we'd been supportive friends, helping each other navigate the practical and emotional challenges of starting over. But there was definitely something growing between us. Joyce was everything my ex-wife wasn't. Honest about her feelings, direct in her communication, supportive without being possessive. She never made me feel like I had to prove myself or walk on eggshells to avoid triggering some emotional landmine. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "How did the final signing go?" I replied, "Officially a free man as of 20 minutes ago. Dinner tonight to celebrate? My treat." "Absolutely. Somewhere nice. We've earned it." I drove home to the house I'd bought her out of. Smaller than what we'd shared, but entirely mine. No shared mortgage, no arguments about furniture placement, no tension about whose turn it was to handle household responsibilities. Just a clean, organized space that reflected my actual preferences instead of being a constant negotiation. As I pulled into the driveway, I thought about how dramatically my life had changed since that first text message from Bali. 8 weeks ago, I'd been a married man trying to convince himself that his wife's increasingly dismissive behavior was normal, that her emotional distance was just a phase, that things would get better if he just tried harder. Now I was divorced, financially stable, and developing a genuine relationship with someone who actually valued my company. The irony wasn't lost on me. My ex-wife had told me to be a good little husband and relax about her betrayal, thinking it would make me more compliant and easier to manipulate. Instead, it had taught me exactly what I wasn't willing to tolerate anymore. I'd taken her advice and relaxed completely, relaxed my grip on a marriage that was making me miserable, relaxed my need to control her choices, relaxed my fear of being alone. And in that relaxation, I'd found something much better than what I'd been fighting to keep. Around 6, Joyce picked me up for dinner. She looked radiant in a way she never had during her marriage to Carl. The stress lines around her eyes had faded, and she carried herself with confidence that was genuinely attractive. "You look happy," she said as I got in the car. "I feel happy, actually happy, not just pretending to be happy while waiting for the other shoe to drop." "I know exactly what you mean. Carl texted me yesterday asking if we could try again now that we've both had time to think." I deleted it without responding. How did that feel? Empowering. 6 months ago, I would have spent hours analyzing what he meant and crafting the perfect response. Now I just don't care what he thinks anymore. We went to a nice Italian restaurant downtown, the kind of place I would never have suggested to my ex-wife because she would have found something wrong with it. The lighting was too dim, or the menu was too limited, or the service was too slow. There was always something. Joyce ordered confidently, asked the server about wine pairings, and generally acted like an adult enjoying an evening out instead of someone looking for reasons to be dissatisfied. "Can I ask you something?" Joyce said after we'd ordered. "Of course." "Do you ever feel guilty about how things ended? Like maybe you should have tried harder to save your marriage?" I thought about it seriously before answering. No. I tried for months to address problems she refused to acknowledge. I suggested counseling multiple times. I bent over backward to accommodate her moods and demands and emotional distance. The only thing I didn't try was accepting being treated like an inconvenience in my own marriage. And that's not something I'm willing to compromise on. Carl's family keeps telling me I gave up too easily. that I should have worked harder to understand why he strayed, what I did to push him away. "That's manipulation," I said firmly. "You're not responsible for managing another adult's choices. You didn't make him cheat any more than I made my ex-wife plan a secret romantic getaway. They made those choices themselves." Joyce smiled and raised her wine glass. "To people who mistake boundaries for giving up. To people who know the difference between love and enablement." We clinked glasses, and I felt deep gratitude. Not just for Joyce's presence in my life, but for the entire experience that had led me here. My ex-wife's betrayal had been painful, but it had also been educational. I'd learned what I actually needed from a relationship. More importantly, I'd learned what I was willing to accept, and what I absolutely wasn't. "So, what's next for you?" Joyce asked. "Honestly, I'm looking forward to building something genuine with someone who actually wants to be with me. No games, no manipulation, no wondering if I'm being told the truth." "That sounds perfect. What about you?" "Same thing. I spent 3 years making excuses for Carl's behavior and trying to be the cool wife who didn't ask questions. I'm done pretending to be someone I'm not to make someone else comfortable with their bad choices." After dinner, we walked around downtown for a while, talking about everything and nothing. It was the kind of easy conversation I'd forgotten was possible between two people who genuinely enjoyed each other's company. "Thank you," Joyce said as we headed back to the car. "For what?" "For showing me how to handle my situation with dignity. Watching you stay calm and strategic instead of getting emotional and reactive. It changed how I approached my own divorce. You would have figured it out on your own. You're stronger than you give yourself credit for." Maybe. But it helped to see someone else refuse to be a victim of their spouse's choices. As she dropped me off at my house, Joyce paused before I got out. "I know we're taking things slow, but I want you to know how much I appreciate having you in my life. You make me feel like myself again. You do the same for me." I leaned over and kissed her gently. It was soft and genuine, and completely free of the tension that had characterized the last year of my marriage. Walking into my house, I thought about that text message that had started everything. "Just ran into my ex here. What a coincidence. Be a good little husband and relax." My ex-wife had meant it as a dismissive instruction to stay passive while she explored her options. Instead, it had become the best advice I'd ever received. I had relaxed. Completely. I'd relaxed my need to control her behavior, my fear of being alone, my attachment to a relationship that was making me miserable. And in that relaxation, I'd found something infinitely better. A peaceful home, a clear conscience, a developing relationship with someone who saw me as a partner rather than an obstacle to their happiness. 6 months ago, I would have been devastated by my wife's betrayal. Now I was grateful for it. She'd set me free to find what I actually wanted. And what I'd found was so much better than what I'd lost. Sometimes the best response to someone telling you to relax about their betrayal is to relax about the entire relationship. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is stop enabling someone's selfishness and start living authentically. My ex-wife had taught me exactly what I didn't want from marriage. Joyce was showing me what I did want. And for the first time in years, the future felt full of genuine possibility rather than anxious obligation. I was finally, completely relaxed. Our story has come to an end. If you've made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I'm sure you'll enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I'll be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.